I have worked the early shift at the Varrath Embassy for 11 years. 4 a.m. start, mop the service corridor, strip and remake the guest linens in suites 1 through 6, polish the marble in the ceremonial hall before the morning delegation arrives. 11 years, and I have never once been asked my name by anyone who lives above the 3rd floor. That is not a complaint. That is just how the work goes. The night I am talking about was a Thursday in late autumn. I know it was a Thursday because I had just filed the weekly linen inventory, which I do every Thursday after the main corridor sweep, and I was carrying a stack of pressed bed sheets down the passage that runs behind the inner courtyard when I heard the sound. It was not a roar. I want to be clear about that, because people ask, and they always expect that part of the story to be dramatic. It was not dramatic. It was a low, broken sound, the way a very large thing breathes when breathing has become difficult. Rhythmic enough that I almost mistook it for a ventilation fault. But ventilation faults do not stop and start the way this did. There was a pause in it, a held moment, and then the sound again, like something counting. I set the linens on the corridor shelf and opened the inner courtyard door. She was in the far corner, against the pale stone wall, between the 2 ornamental fire trees the embassy keeps in iron pots. I did not know what she was at first, in the sense that my mind could not immediately organize what it was seeing. She was enormous, curled in on herself the way a dog curls when it is cold, but scaled, deep iron amber scales, ridged at the shoulder, finer along the throat and belly, wings folded tight against her flanks, a tail that stretched 6 feet along the courtyard floor. Her head was down on the stone, and her eyes were open, and she was looking at nothing in particular, with the specific stillness of a creature that is putting all of its available effort into the single task of remaining alive. I stood in the doorway for a moment. I am not a brave person in any remarkable way. I am a practical person, and the practical thing my mind did in that moment was to look at what was in front of me and try to identify what it needed. What it needed, as far as I could see, was warmth, water, and someone to sit with it. I went back to the linen shelf, took the full stack, pressed sheets and all, I sorted that out later, and carried them to the courtyard. I spread the top 2 sheets over her flank and her folded wings as best I could reach, which was not very far, but I folded them against the edge of her wing joint, where there was at least some contact with her skin. She did not react to this. Her eyes moved to me once, and then moved away. I went to the service sink at the end of the corridor and filled the largest mop bucket I had. I am aware that is not a dignified vessel. I carried it back and set it within reach of her muzzle. She looked at it for a long time, then she drank. After that, I pulled the wooden chair from the corridor alcove, the one the overnight security porter uses when he does his paperwork, and I sat down beside her. I did not know what else to do, so I stayed. I talked to her, some. Not about anything meaningful. I told her about the linen inventory and the way Suite 4's mattress clips had been giving me trouble for 3 weeks, and how I had finally requested a replacement set from the embassy steward and been told the order was pending. I told her the morning delegation was due at 7, and that if she was still here when they arrived, someone senior would know what to do, and that I would make sure she was not disturbed before that. I do not know if any of it reached her, but she kept breathing, and the breathing steadied over the course of the hour, and that was enough to go on. Somewhere around 2 in the morning she shifted. A slow movement, deliberate, and she turned her head toward me. Her eyes in the courtyard light were amber, very pale at the center, and they were focused, not on the middle distance anymore, but on me specifically. Then she made a sound, low, sustained, nothing I had heard before, and nothing I have heard since. It was not a word in any language I know, but it had the shape of one, the shape of something said directly to a person, with full intent. I nodded. I told her I heard her. She put her head back down on the stone and closed her eyes, and after a while, her breathing slowed into something that sounded, finally, like rest. I sat with her until the sky above the courtyard went pale. I refilled the bucket once more around 4:30, and she drank again without lifting her head, just enough movement to reach. I kept the sheets where they were. When the 5 o'clock alarm went off on my wrist, I silenced it and stayed. I was asleep in the chair when they arrived. That is not something I would normally admit, but it is the truth, and the truth is all I have to offer here. The sound that woke me was the courtyard gate opening, and I came up out of the chair with the particular jolt of a person who has fallen asleep somewhere they had not intended to fall asleep, already apologizing before I had fully worked out what I was apologizing to. There were 7 of them, larger than her, most of them, though one was smaller and clearly young, iron gray and slate gold, a deep bronze at the shoulders on the one who stood at the center. They had come in through the main gate, and they had stopped. They were looking at the courtyard, and they were looking at her, and she was breathing slowly and steadily in the pale morning light, with 2 pressed embassy bed sheets draped across her wing joint, and a mop bucket, and me. I did not know what the correct protocol was. I told them what I had found and when, and that I had done what I could, and that I was sorry for the sheets. I told them the morning delegation was not due for another hour and 40 minutes, and that the courtyard had been quiet through the night. I told them her breathing had been worse at 1 in the morning, and better by 3. The one in the center had not moved the entire time I was speaking. When I finished, there was a silence long enough that I picked up the mop bucket, as something to do with my hands. Then he spoke. Not to me directly, not at first. He said something to the others in the Varrath tongue, short and clear, and the 6 of them lowered their heads in a way that I understood, even without any knowledge of their customs. Then he turned to me. He said my kind had a word for what I had done. He said his kind had one too, though it was older. He said it was Kethyeva, and that it meant, in the way these names mean things that are difficult to carry in translation, the one who sat with the fire when it could not hold itself up. I told him my name was Yeva Marsh, and I was the morning housekeeper. He said he knew. He said that was the point. She recovered. I learned that later, from a note that appeared under the service corridor door, unsigned, written in the Varrath script with a rough translation in the margin. She had been 7 days out from her flight and had not told anyone she was unwell. The note did not explain why she had chosen the inner courtyard, and I did not ask. Some things are not mine to know. The change on the duty roster appeared the following week. My name, my shift, and beside it, a small notation in a script I could not read. When I asked the embassy steward what it said, he looked at it for a long time, and told me it was a standing instruction from the Varrath Council that the inner courtyard was now on my corridor route, permanently, and that if the courtyard door was ever found open at night, no one was to interfere. I don't know what that means exactly, in terms of the larger arrangement of things. I don't know what I am to them, or what the name means beyond the translation the elder gave me. What I know is this: I have 4 a.m. start, mop the service corridor, strip and remake the guest linens in suites 1 through 6, and now I also unlock the inner courtyard door and check the fire trees in their iron pots. The bucket is still under the corridor shelf, where I left it. I have not needed it again. I expect that is a good thing.